Chile, not the chili you eat, although I do like the chili you eat, but Chile, the country, which I don't know why they call it Chile because it's hot there, but nonetheless, all right? But Chile is the world's top copper producing place. And back in 2010, August the 5th, they have mines in there, and there was an incident in one of these mines, and it collapsed, and it sealed 33 men in some 700 meters or 2,300 feet underground. And they were about 5 kilometers from the actual entrance of the mine, and it sealed them in there for 69 days. In that mine, there was a spot where they could go, and there was a room that obviously they had dug out, and they called it the refuge. And they were able to communicate that they were there after a while. Actually, there was a drill that went down, and someone tied a note onto that drill, and then they pulled it out, so they found out that people were still alive down there. But they had no idea if there was anybody coming for them for a long time. And on August the 5th of 2010, there was a Christian man there, and his name was Don Jose Enriquez. And he turned to a fellow miner, his name was Mario, and he said, God is the only way out of this. And Mario, the guys got together in this room called the refuge. Mario made an announcement to everybody that was there, and he said this. He said, Don Jose, we know you are a Christian man, and we need you to lead us in prayer. Will you do that? Don Jose, he became known for the rest of the 69 days, and maybe even after that. They called him the pastor after that. But he said he began to tell them what they needed to do, and he dropped down to his knees, and he told the men, he says, you need to drop to your knees and humble yourself before God when we're going to talk to him. And the men got down on their knees, and this is the prayer that he prayed, essentially. He said, we aren't the best men, but Lord, have pity on us. This statement, it took some of these men very hard, and he continued on. Imagine this prayer. He says, Victor Segovia knows he drinks too much. Victor Zamora is too quick to anger. Pedro Cortez thinks about the poor father he's been to his young daughter. He left the girl's mother, and he hasn't even had the basic fatherly thing to do and visit his little girl, even though he knows his absence is inflicting lasting hurt on her. Jesus Christ our Lord, let us enter into the sacred throne of your grace and consider this moment of difficulty for ours, for we are sinners and we need you. Just about everyone was there, and they were listening to this man, and up until this point, they had mocked him and so forth and didn't want anything to do with the fact that he loved God. But after this, they realized, we need you to get to God for us. And it was called they're called the A shift, and it said that these guys in this A shift really kind of learned what was important. You know, most of us don't want to ask for help, do we? We don't want to ask for help. Many of us don't think that we even need any help. We think we're okay, we're good enough the way we are, we're strong enough the way we are, we can handle what life throws at us, and we don't need any help. But I want to show you this morning that we do need some help, and we need some help long before we get buried like those guys were buried, whether it's buried in debt or buried in emotional burden or buried in whatever that is. We need help. And it is vitally important that we recognize that we need help and where we need to get that help from. We have been looking the last few weeks at angels and doing a little study on various angels and so forth. And right tonight we're going to look at unholy angels, but it really kind of all hinges around one verse, all right? And that one verse is in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12. It says, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Whether we choose to recognize that or not, the spiritual wickedness that around us, it's invisible as far as We can see the spirit world and what it is doing, but it is very real, and it has some great consequences to us. We learned last week about Satan, and we learned that sin began with Satan. Satan made a choice. He made a choice. He made a choice against God. He made a choice against holiness, and his choice affected many others. I got news for you. When we sin, when I sin, when you sin, it's because we make a choice. It's because we make a choice against God. It's because we make a choice against holiness. And because of our choice affects others. You all know that I love the Bible character of Joseph. We've got 3 Josephs here this morning, all right? Good name. But Joseph in the Bible, when Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him, I love what Joseph says, and he says, that how can I sin and do this great evil against God? And when we sin, it's a choice that we make, and it would be great if it would just affected us. Wouldn't it? I deserve it. I've sinned. But it's not. Sin doesn't play fair. It doesn't play fair. And it doesn't affect just me. It affects others. And it affects God. And that's what Joseph was mostly concerned about, was that what he would do when he would do that sin with that Potiphar's wife, that he would be sinning against God. Satan, I want you to take your Bibles, and we're going to take you all the way to the very back. Revelation chapter number 12. Revelation chapter number 12. I'm only going to get you to go to 2 spots. We got lots of other verses. I'm going to keep Greg busy at the back there. But we understand here that John, the disciple John, the apostle John, was given, he lived the longest, all the rest of the disciples, when John was given the revelation of Jesus Christ, the last book of the Bible. When he was given that, all the other disciples were dead. All right, and from what we can understand through church history, and some through Bible portions here, where all other 11 of them were probably martyred. Okay, John managed not to get martyred, but he was in prison at the time on an island called Patmos, and God gave him this vision, and some of it is a little bit hard to understand, all right? But I want you to see something here, that this passage here in Revelation chapter 12, verse number 3, it says, "And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads, and his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven. And they cast them to the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as he was born, as soon as it was born." I understand that this is referring to, at least most Bible scholars believe that this is calling him the great red dragon. Satan has a number of descriptive names that he's called Satan. He's called the devil. He's called the dragon. He's called the serpent. And most believe that this is an account showing what happens, as we looked last week in Isaiah and in Ezekiel chapter 28, Isaiah chapter 14, of when Satan, after he made that choice to sin, that he left, and it talks about this great red dragon of taking his tail and taking a 3rd of the stars. What's understood is that it's a 3rd of the angels decided to go with him, all right, and sin against God. At any case, if this is not talking about that, and I believe it is, still there was a great number of angels that did follow Satan, these unholy angels that followed him, all right? And understand that when these, we're going to look at them, these unholy angels, but sometimes they're called evil spirits, sometimes they're called demons, all right? If you're into old movies, they might have called them gremlins, but that's not what they are. They're evil. They're not cute little green creatures that run around and spook people, all right? These are evil, vile angels that gave themselves over to sin. They made a choice. Just as Satan made a choice, they made a choice. They made a choice against God. They made a choice against holiness, all right? But as Satan had that great influence as being what we call the anointed cherub, or what Ezekiel calls the anointed cherub, all right? He had great influence, and many of these angels followed him, all right? These unholy angels, I want to show you a few things about them. But because of this rebellion that they did, God created hell. And God created hell. It is a very real place, all right? It is not an imaginary place. As a matter of fact, from what I understand, I've never actually done all the counting myself and so forth, but from what I understand, Jesus actually talked about hell about 2 times more than he talked about heaven in our Gospels, all right? Hell is a very real place. And in one place, he describes hell in Matthew chapter 25 and verse 41. It says, "Then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels." The devil and his angels, those angels that fell with him. Hell wasn't made for people. But sadly, the majority of people are going to end up in hell because they refuse to accept the gift of salvation in Jesus Christ by him dying on the cross for their sin. It's too easy. It's too simple. I'll do it later. Whatever their excuse is, it's going to cost them eternity. But hell is a very real place. It's not made for people. It was created for Satan and his angels. And Satan's not there, but some of his angels are there. Now, some of his angels are moving around, and they're demons around, and many of them are around. We know that when we talk about the man that Christ threw the demons out of at Gadara, he says, "We are legion. My name is Legion, for we are many." A legion's 1,000. There's at least 1,000, maybe. They don't take up any room. They're spirits, all right? And they're inside of him, and then they leave, and they go into a herd of 2,000 pigs, and they go running off the cliff, all right? But there is all kinds of them around there, but these angels, some of them are confined now. In 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 4, it says, "For if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment." Some of these angels, I don't know what they did, but some of these angels did something else, or something along with, or whatever they did. And God says some of those angels, they don't have the freedom to go around, whatever freedom they have, like those demons that possess people, and we saw that. They don't have that freedom. God has some of those angels are chained and held imprisoned, all right? Now I'm going to take you to a passage, and we're going to look at this passage. Some people believe that the reason that they are, that some angels got put here is because of a sin that they think that they did. I personally don't believe this, all right? I'm going to take you to this passage and show you why I think that they're stretching things. But let me say this, though. There are some very good, godly men that do believe that these angels actually committed this sin that I'm going to show you in just a minute. I don't believe it, but I could be wrong. I think they're wrong, all right? But I'm going to show you what it is, and we're going to look at that just ever so briefly. I want you to take your Bibles and come with me to Genesis chapter 6, all right? Genesis chapter number 6. So I take you to the last book of the Bible, Revelation. Let me take you to the first book of the Bible, Genesis. Genesis chapter 6. I'm going to read verses 1 to 4. This is just prior to the flood. Okay? "And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown." If we were to continue on, we see that God saw the wickedness, and that's when he said that there's going to be a flood. Some people think that when it talks about here, when it says that the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, some think that these sons of God were actually fallen angels, all right? And somehow or other these angels had children with some of these women that were humans, all right? And God took them from there, from doing this vile thing, and chained them up, put them in chains forever, okay? I don't believe that, and I'm going to give you just a couple of reasons why. I know this passage comes up several times when people look at this and see, why is this, all right? we see here that it talks about the sons of God. Okay, now there was in that day the sons of God came to, in Job chapter 1, Job chapter 1 and verse number 6 says this. It says, now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. We understand that when there was the challenge of Job, all right, there was the sons of God, all right. This is clearly talking about angels, all right, that they came before God and Satan came with them, all right, and there was the challenge of Job. So that the angels are sometimes called the sons of God, but not just the angels are called the sons of God. Sometimes I am called a son of God, all right? I have been adopted into salvation, and it says that I'm an heir and a joint heir with Christ. In John chapter number 1 and verse number 12, it says, but as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. So, sons of God sometimes is referring to those that belong to God. Well, I guess it's always they belong to God, all right? It could be angels that belong to God, or it can be humans that belong to God, all right? If you look at this, if you look at this verse here, when in Genesis chapter 6, all right, or I'm sorry, in Job rather, chapter 1 and verse 6, it says, now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. You know what? Is Satan called a son of God? No. There's the sons of God, and Satan came there as well. Never anywhere in the Bible does it refer to unholy angels as sons of God. They don't have that relationship with God. I have that relationship because I've been born again. You can have that same relationship if you are born again. And these other angels can be so this one, it's talking here about them being sons of God. I don't believe they can be angels because, fallen angels, because they weren't ever called sons of God anywhere else in Scripture, all right? We see also something else here. If we look at this passage of Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 to 4, the main thrust of this, we look at this thing and the word giants jumps out at us, all right? Wow, there's giants, all right? But the main thrust of this passage is not talking about giants. Yes, they're there, all right? But the main thrust of this passage is talking about the fact that society has gone into the tank here, all right? And it's the great sin that is there and so forth. So that is the main thrust of this. The giants are not necessarily a result of who had children with who, all right? The giants are there. They're a very real thing, all right? We see there's other giants. All of these are clearly, they're all wiped out from the flood. But there's other, what are called giants, and we're not talking Jack and the Beanstalk giants, okay? We're just talking people that are huge people, all right? And we know that Goliath was a giant, probably just under 10 feet tall. That's a big guy, okay? But we're not talking, like I say, you rest your arm on his toe or anything like that, okay? But so that there were these giants here, but these people that were there, all right? What I believe it's talking about when it talks about the sons of God, these are people that are godly men. Godly men that have decided to marry into ungodly relationships. Now, some would say that it's the line of Seth versus the line of Cain, and that is very possible, but I'm not going to say that there was nobody in the line of Cain that was godly, all right? But more than likely it would be just from the people from the line of Seth. So it's these people, these godly men that decided to intermarry with ungodly women, all right? And the Bible tells us in the New Testament this is a wrong thing to do, all right? In 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 14, it says, be not unequally yoked together with unbelievers, for what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness? All right, so what happens here is these godly men marrying these ungodly women, and it took them down. What happened to Solomon? Solomon had marriages with other, like Pharaoh's daughter and so forth. And he did it for political reasons and for, to get extra funds and so forth and to make some affinities with other countries. But they pulled him down. He said, well, in one spot, like it amazes me how blinding sin can be to us, all right? How he could miss up. He says, well, you know what? You're an idol worshiper. You can't come into here in this holy city. I'm going to make your house over here. Wake up, Solomon, all right? Like you recognize that this person doesn't have anything to do with God, so they can't be here in the temple and so forth, so we're just going to put them somewhere else. But it drugged them down. And the influence that is there, all right, when someone is recognized as being the leader, and because they have changed, they drag the whole nation down with them. In my personal Bible reading, right now I've been reading through the times of the kings, all right? And not so much the kings of Israel, but the kings of Judah, after they split, all right? Because all the kings of Israel are terrible people, all right? Every one of them followed in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, all right? But many of the kings of Judah were godly men. But one of the godly kings that I really love is Hezekiah, all right? Godly man Hezekiah. When he died, his son Manasseh became king. Now they were following God while Hezekiah was the king. But when Manasseh became king, he reigned for 55 years, and he says he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And you know what Israel did? They followed him into sin. And I'm sure there was still some people that clung to God, all right? But many of them turned away from that. And remember when we talked in Sunday evening about Absalom? And Absalom does his evil sin in front of everybody, and everybody thinks this is wonderful, all right? We can do all these evil things now because this is our king is leading us here. And that's what happened on the earth, where the godly lines hooked up with some evil women that were there rather than sticking with the godly women, and they led society down to where, verse number 5, it says, and God saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. How's that? Every thought, only evil, non-stop, all right? And brought about because these people did that. Also, number 3, first of all, first reason, unholy angels are never called the sons of God anywhere else, all right? Second reason is that it's talking about, I believe it's talking about godly men marrying ungodly women, all right? The third thing is we have in Matthew chapter 22, verse number 29, Jesus is speaking here, and he says, and Jesus answered and said unto them, ye do err, not knowing the Scriptures, nor the power of God, for in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of God in heaven. When we go to heaven, as much as I love my wife, we won't be husband and wife anymore. I might recognize her as that's what she was, but you're not married again in heaven, just like the angels. The angels don't get married. There is no such thing as a baby angel, all right? They do not procreate. That is, God did not create them that way at all. And here the men were trying to trick Jesus into saying, whose wife is this going to be, because they didn't believe in the resurrection. And Jesus says, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't read your Bible. When in the resurrection, there is no marriage. There is no husband and wife relationship when you get to heaven. Just like the angels. They don't marry. They don't have children, and so forth. That's reason number 3. Reason number 4 is this. Salvation is never offered to angels. When they sinned, they're done. God died for us. Jesus sent his son to die for us. So if there is half angel, half person, where are they? Where is their eternal soul? It just doesn't make sense, okay? So I don't believe, like in that passage there, we're talking about evil angels. But like I say, there's some good men that believe that is true. I do not. But I wanted to give that to you, but these evil angels, I want to look at these things, these unholy angels, these evil spirits, these unclean spirits that God calls them. There's some interesting things about them. Angels themselves have, in holy angels I'm talking about, all right, they have rank designations. In other words, there is a hierarchy in the angelic realm. Before Satan sinned, it says that he was the anointed cherub that covered. I think that he was like, if not the top, very, very close to the top angel that God had put there, all right? And he, through his pride and through him wanting to take over where God was and to be equal with God in his foolishness, his sin blinded him. He tried to take over, and God says, there's no contest here. And he tossed him out. But understand that there's ranks. In Daniel chapter 13, it's cool, Daniel got to meet up with a couple angels. But in Daniel chapter 10 and verse number 13, it says, but the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, but lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. And it's talking, Michael is an angel, all right? And it says here that he's a good angel, and it says that Michael has a position. He is one of the chief princes. Paul tells us in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and verse 16, he says, for the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first at the rapture. The archangel. I believe there's only one archangel, all right? And I think he is now the top, all right? But, there's so much that God doesn't tell us about angels, but there's smatterings of it, all right? We know of angels, good angels, that there are seraphim. We know that there are cherubim. I think there's probably many more that God just doesn't tell us about. We're going to be so surprised in heaven. You know when it talks about that one verse where it says there'll be silence in heaven for about the space of half an hour? And everybody likes to make a joke. Well, I guess the women aren't there yet, all right? I don't make that joke, all right? But I've heard that joke before, and I think it's terrible, ladies, okay? But I think it's because we're going to be just so... It's going to blow us away. It's going to blow us away. But these angels, we see that they have rank. You know what? Satan's angels have rank as well. We see in one of the arguments that the Pharisees and Sadducees had with Christ, the Pharisees here in Matthew chapter 12 and verse 24, it says, but when the Pharisees heard it, they said, this fellow doth not cast out devils, but by Beelzebub, the prince of the devils. They have rank too. They have rank. They came from ranks. They have ranks. They are very, okay, listen here. We need to understand something. They're organized. This isn't just a fly by the seat of their pants thing that they're doing, all right? If a spirit can wear pants, but nonetheless, all right? Back to our verse that I said everything hinges on. Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12 tells us, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. They are organized, all right? They're organized. They're unclean and they're vile, and they do evil things to people. We know the man that was possessed in Gadara, he's running around naked. Where did he live? He lived in tombs. And while he was there, he takes stones and he cut himself. They're evil and vile. Okay, that's the influence that these unholy angels or these demons or these unclean spirits or whatever you want to call them, these unholy angels, that's what they do. But they are organized. They do other things to people. There's in Mark chapter 9 and verse 17, it talks about a man that was possessed and he couldn't talk. He made him dumb. That's what the spirits could do. All right? They're evil and they're vile. They're organized. They are intelligent. They are experienced. So why is it? Why is it that in this spiritual battle, as it tells us there in Ephesians, against Satan's organized army of experienced, unholy angels that are superior in intelligence to us, why do we think we can do it alone? Why do you think we can just handle it alone? We battle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness in high places, principalities and powers and rulers of darkness. Why do we think we can do it alone? The simple answer is, we can't. Think you can, but we can't. We're just like what Jesus told Peter. He told Peter, he says, Peter, Satan hath desired you to have you that he may sift you as wheat. Luke 22:31. Satan wants to sift you as wheat. Most of us, as I said at the beginning, don't want to ask for help. Most of us don't think we need any help. But you know what? That's one of the greatest reasons why God gave us the church. Why Jesus died for the church. We can't do it alone. But a real church is not just a building. We call it the church. That's the church building. We come there. But it's not just that. People come to other churches, church buildings, and there's nothing there. They come, I was talking with someone earlier, I think it was this week actually, and they were saying, when I went to this particular church, you didn't know anybody. You came in, you sat down, you did your thing, the guy did whatever he did up at the front, and you didn't know anybody unless you maybe went to school with them or something like that. We just didn't know. And you leave. That's not a church. That's not Christianity. That's just religion. And religion's not going to cut it for you. What true Christianity is God says that Jesus says that he died for the church. In Ephesians chapter 6, I can't remember where the verse is now, it says, but husbands, love your wives, even as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. This church belongs to Jesus Christ, all right? And a real church works together, all right? Works together. We can't do it alone. Galatians chapter 6, verse 2 says, bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Bear ye one another's burdens. In John 13:34, it says, this is a new commandment I give unto you. That's what the law of Jesus Christ is. The new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another. All right? And here we have that bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. That's what the law of Christ is. Ephesians chapter 4 in verse 2 says, with all lowliness and meekness, with long suffering, forbearing one another in love. That word forbearing is to come alongside and to help someone, to hold them up. I've used this illustration before. There was a man, his name was Derek Redmond, and he was running in the Olympics. And he was running the 400-meter race. And he took off into the 400-meter race. He'd been training for this all his life. And he got about 150 meters down the track, and he tore his hamstring, and he went down in a heap. And while he's there writhing in pain, his dad, a big man, came barreling down through the stands and came rushing out onto the field. And Derek pushed him away. No, don't, just leave me alone here. No, I'm not going to. He said, wait a minute, Derek, it's me, your dad. And because he thought that they were going to pull him off the race. It's because he can't obviously win. I mean, everybody else is done. He's still laying on the ground. And he says, I got to finish. He says, that's okay. I'll help you. And he came alongside of him, and he helped him, took him to the finish line, and just before the finish line, he let him go so that he could cross the finish line by himself, and then helped him. But that's coming alongside of. That's what it's talking about here. And it says, with all lowliness and meekness, with long suffering, forbearing one another, coming alongside and helping them. That's what we do. That's what a church is for. One of the things that the church is for, all right? To come alongside of. Colossians chapter 3 and verse 16 says, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your heart to the Lord, coming alongside of and admonishing one another, helping one another, building one another up, and sometimes even having to tell somebody, you're doing the wrong thing here. Or coming alongside somebody, it's a whole lot better to say, I really like what you're doing in serving God and giving God your best. That's admonishing as well. And coming alongside and helping them. Because we can't do it alone. We are in a battle, a spiritual battle. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 11 says, "Wherefore comfort yourselves together and edify one another, even as ye also do." To help to build one another up. That's the power of the church. That's why God has designed, one of the reasons he has designed this church age. And to come to church, this isn't just a place just to come. This is a place to come and to help one another, because we can't beat those demons. We can't see them, can't hear them, can't smell them, nothing. But they're there, all right? Let me give you some limitations to them. They're not omnipresent. In other words, they can't be everywhere at once. There could be one here and one there and another one over there and so forth, but they're not like God. We have God who's omnipresent. He's everywhere. But the demons aren't everywhere. Demons, they can't foretell the future. But understand this. They have been around watching human behavior since human behavior became a thing, since creation. They have watched humans and how we react to almost any possible situation. So they have very much experience, and they can predict with a high degree what will work and what won't. And they can see what we have done. They're powerful creatures. And all they want to do is drag us away from God. But we need one another to help us in that battle. Trying to live a holy life for God is not something we can just take lightly. We need to work together, and we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared. As I mentioned, I'm reading through 2 Chronicles. I just jumped into Ezra this week. That as I looked at these kings, there's a couple verses that just kind of jumped out and grabbed me by the throat. And Rehoboam, he was Solomon's son. And Rehoboam messed up. 2 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 14, it says, "And he did evil because." Wasn't because of what he did. He did the evil, all right? But the reason he did the evil was because he prepared not his heart to seek the Lord. It wasn't something that he did that made him evil. It was something he didn't do. He didn't prepare his heart. We have to prepare our hearts. Jehoshaphat, great king Jehoshaphat. 2 Chronicles chapter 19 and verse 3. "Nevertheless, there are good things found in thee, in that thou hast taken away the groves out of the land, and hast prepared thine heart to seek the Lord." He was prepared. Ezra, as I got into Ezra chapter 7 and verse 10, it says, "For Ezra had prepared his heart to seek the law of the Lord and to do it, and to teach in Israel statutes and judgment." It takes effort to prepare your heart and to work together to help one another, to admonish one another, to forbear one another, come alongside of, and to help one another, because, my friends, we are in a spiritual battle. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and the rulers of darkness of this world. I think I missed a couple of words, but you know the verse that I'm talking about, Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12. The point is this, folks. We need one another. I need you. You need me. You need the person beside you to be praying for you, to be helping you, to come alongside you and to help you. That's the purpose that's true Christianity. That's not just religion. Not just religion. True Christianity. We help one another because it's a battle that we're in. Let's pray. Precious Father, thank you so much for your goodness.